The crackling of the fireplace creates a gentle rhythm as we begin our journey into the fascinating world of medieval sleep. The flames dance softly, casting warm shadows that seem to beckon us back through the centuries to a time when the very concept of sleep was entirely different from what we know today. Medieval Europe, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th centuries, was a world governed by natural light and seasonal rhythms. There were no electric bulbs to extend the day, no digital clocks to segment time into precise measurements. Instead, people lived by the sun's path across the sky, the phases of the moon, and the changing seasons that dictated not just their work, but their rest. In this era, sleep was not the continuous 8-hour block that modern society has come to expect. The medieval mind understood sleep as something far more fluid, more connected to the natural world around them. They lived in a time when darkness held different meanings, when night brought both rest and mystery, and when the boundary between waking and sleeping was far more permeable than we might imagine today. The fireplace continues its gentle crackling, the logs settling with soft whispers that seem to echo the whispers of centuries past. In medieval times, most homes centered around a similar fire, the hearth being the beating heart of domestic life. Families would gather around these fires as evening approached, sharing stories, mending clothes, and preparing for the night ahead. Medieval people understood that sleep came in waves, in natural cycles, that modern science is only now beginning to rediscover. They spoke of first sleep and second sleep, recognizing that the long winter nights naturally divided into periods of rest separated by a quiet, contemplative wakefulness. This was not seen as insomnia or a sleep disorder, but as a natural part of human rhythm. The wealthy merchant in his stone house, the peasant in his humble cottage, the monk in his monastery cell, and the noble in her castle chamber all shared this fundamental understanding of sleep's ebb and flow. Sleep was not conquered or controlled, but rather embraced as a natural partner in the dance of daily life. As we settle deeper into our contemplation, the fire's warmth reminds us of those medieval nights when families would bank their fires carefully before retiring, ensuring that some warmth would remain through the cold hours. The ritual of preparing for sleep was elaborate and meaningful, each step a bridge between the active day and the restorative night. Medieval bedchambers were sanctuaries, but not in the way we might imagine. They were often shared spaces where privacy was a luxury afforded only to the very wealthy. Entire families might sleep in a single room with servants, guests, and even animals sharing the warmth and protection that walls provided against the uncertain world outside. The sounds of the medieval night were different too. No hum of electricity, no distant traffic, no mechanical intrusions into the natural soundscape. Instead, there were the sounds that have accompanied human sleep for millennia. The whisper of wind through thatch, the settling of timber, the distant call of night birds, and the soft breathing of loved ones nearby. In monasteries across Europe, monks developed elaborate rituals around sleep and waking. They understood that the night hours were not empty time to be unconscious, but rather sacred hours for prayer, contemplation, and spiritual preparation. Their sleep schedules were carefully crafted to align with these spiritual practices, creating a rhythm that honored both human need for rest and divine connection. The fire pops gently, sending a small shower of sparks up the chimney, and we can almost imagine we are in a medieval hall, surrounded by tapestries that flutter slightly in the draft, while outside the thick walls, the world settles into its ancient patterns of rest and renewal. Medieval physicians, working with knowledge inherited from ancient Greece and Rome, understood sleep as one of the fundamental non naturals, external factors that influenced health and well being. They believed that sleep needed to be balanced with waking, just as heat needed to be balanced with cold and moisture with dryness. This holistic approach to rest created sleeping practices that modern sleep science is only beginning to understand and validate. The gentle crackling continues, a constant companion as we prepare to delve deeper into the specific habits and practices that governed medieval sleep. These were not primitive people fumbling in the dark, but rather individuals who had developed sophisticated understandings of rest, comfort, and the delicate balance between consciousness and dreams. As the fireplace continues its steady, comforting rhythm, we find ourselves drawing closer to understanding the intricate world of medieval sleep customs. The flames seem to illuminate not just our present moment, but the past itself, revealing practices and beliefs that would seem wonderfully strange to our modern sensibilities. In medieval Europe, the concept of sleeping through the night in one continuous stretch was not just uncommon, it was considered somewhat unnatural. Historical documents from the period regularly reference first sleep and second sleep, terms so common that they required no explanation for contemporary readers. People would retire to their beds shortly after sunset, sleep for several hours, then wake naturally in the deep of night for a period of quiet wakefulness that lasted 1 to 3 hours. During this midnight awakening, which they called the watching, medieval people engaged in activities that seem almost magical to our hurried modern minds. They would lie in bed and pray, meditate on the day's events, or contemplate spiritual matters. Couples would talk softly, sharing intimate thoughts that the busy daylight hours had no time for. Some would rise and tend to household tasks by candlelight, checking on animals, banking fires, or preparing for the next day. The fire shifts and settles, creating new patterns of light and shadow. Much like those medieval people created new patterns of rest and wakefulness throughout their nights. What seems most remarkable about this practice is how deeply natural it was. There was no anxiety about getting back to sleep, no tossing and turning with worry. The watching period was simply accepted as part of the night's natural rhythm. Medieval bedrooms were arranged very differently from modern sleeping spaces. Privacy, as we understand it, was largely unknown except among the very wealthy. Most families slept together in a single room, often in a single large bed that might accommodate parents, children, and even household servants. These great beds were substantial pieces of furniture, often the most expensive item a family owned, constructed with thick posts and heavy curtains that could be drawn for warmth and a semblance of privacy. The bed curtains served multiple purposes beyond modesty. In an age before central heating, they created a microclimate of warmth around the sleepers. Medieval people understood the importance of maintaining body temperature during sleep, and these textile cocoons were an ingenious solution to the challenge of staying warm through long, cold nights. The quality and quantity of bedding varied enormously by social class, but even the humblest households had developed effective strategies for comfortable sleep. Peasants might sleep on straw mattresses, but they understood how to prepare this straw properly, changing it regularly and mixing it with sweet herbs like lavender, mint, or chamomile to create a pleasant, sleep inducing aroma. Wealthy households had access to feather beds, which were considered the height of luxury. These were not simply mattresses filled with any feathers, but carefully prepared beds filled with the softest down from geese and swans. The preparation of such a bed was an art form, requiring specific knowledge of how to clean, sort, and arrange the feathers for maximum comfort and longevity. The fire crackles softly, and we can imagine the satisfaction a medieval housewife might have felt as she prepared her family's sleeping space each evening, ensuring that every detail contributed to restful sleep. The ritual of preparing for bed was elaborate and meaningful, beginning well before actual sleep time. Medieval people understood that the transition from wakefulness to sleep required preparation, both physical and mental. They would begin their evening rituals as the sun set, gradually shifting their activities from the active work of day to the quieter preparations of night. This might include tidying the house, securing animals, checking that fires were properly banked, and gathering the family for evening prayers. Personal hygiene before bed was more elaborate than popular misconceptions suggest. While daily bathing, as we know it, was not common, medieval people had sophisticated understanding of cleanliness and its relationship to health and sleep. They would wash their hands and faces, clean their teeth with cloth or primitive brushes, and change into clean, sleeping garments when such luxury was available. The sleeping garments themselves were fascinating. The wealthy might have elaborate nightgowns made of fine linen or silk, often embroidered with protective symbols or religious imagery. The less wealthy simply removed their outer garments and slept in their underclothes. But even these were designed with sleep in mind, made of soft, breathable fabrics that allowed for comfortable rest. Medieval people also understood the importance of mental preparation for sleep. Evening prayers were not just religious obligations, but psychological rituals that helped transition the mind from the concerns of day to the peace of night. These prayers often included specific requests for protection during the vulnerable hours of sleep, acknowledgement of the day's blessings and challenges, and preparation for whatever the next day might bring. The concept of nightmares was taken very seriously in medieval times, not just as psychological phenomena, but as potential spiritual threats. People developed elaborate protective rituals, from hanging specific herbs around the bed to saying particular prayers before sleep. They understood that the mind was especially vulnerable during sleep, and they took active steps to protect themselves during these hours of unconsciousness. As the fire continues, its gentle conversation with the night, we begin to appreciate how thoughtfully medieval people approached the daily transition from waking to sleeping, treating it not as a simple biological necessity, but as a complex, meaningful part of human experience. The warmth from our fireplace seems to transport us directly into a medieval bedchamber where the rituals of sleep were about to begin. The gentle crackling provides a soundtrack as we imagine ourselves observing the careful, deliberate preparations that marked the end of each medieval day. A typical medieval bedroom in a prosperous household would have been dominated by the great bed, a substantial piece of furniture that often took up a quarter or more of the room's space. These beds were not merely places to sleep, but symbols of family status, wealth, and continuity. The bed frame itself was often carved with religious symbols, family crests, or protective imagery designed to ward off evil spirits during the vulnerable hours of sleep. The mattress would have been a carefully constructed affair, layers of different materials designed to provide both comfort and support. The foundation might be rope or leather strapping, tensioned to provide a firm base. Above this would be place the mattress proper, stuffed with whatever materials were available and affordable. Straw was common among the less wealthy, but it was not simply thrown into a sack. Skilled housekeepers knew how to select the right types of straw, how to dry it properly, and how to mix it with herbs that would provide pleasant scents and discourage insects. The fire settles with a soft whisper, and we can almost hear the rustle of straw being arranged, the careful layering of materials that would provide a night's comfort. Wealthier households might have wool stuffed mattresses, with the wool carefully cleaned and carded to remove any debris or unwanted materials. The finest beds were stuffed with down from waterfowl, creating a sleeping surface so comfortable that it was said to rival the clouds themselves. Over the mattress would be placed the bed linens, and here too there was both art and science in medieval sleeping arrangements. The bottom sheet, if one existed, was often made of coarse linen for durability. This would be covered by finer linens, as wealth allowed, with the finest households having sheets made of silk or the most delicate linen, woven so fine that it felt like silk against the skin. Blankets and coverlets were layered according to the season and the sleeper's needs. Wool blankets provided the primary warmth, but these were often covered with decorative coverlets made of fine fabrics and elaborately embroidered or woven with patterns that told stories, displayed wealth, or provided spiritual protection. Or thought very wealthy might have coverlets lined with fur, providing both warmth and luxury that declared the family's prosperity to any who saw the bed. The bed curtains were perhaps the most important element of the medieval sleeping arrangement. These were not merely decorative, but served crucial practical purposes. They provided privacy in an age when privacy was rare, created a warmer micro-environment around the sleepers, and offered psychological comfort by creating a defined, protected space for sleep. The fire pops gently, and we can imagine the soft swoosh of heavy fabric being drawn around a medieval bed, creating an intimate sanctuary within the larger room. These curtains were often made of heavy wool or tapestry, sometimes lined with lighter fabrics for comfort. The patterns and colors were carefully chosen, often featuring protective symbols, religious imagery, or family heraldry. The ritual of preparing the bed each day was elaborate and meaningful. Servants, or in humbler households, the housewife herself, would carefully arrange and rearrange the bedding. The mattress would be turned and fluffed, the linens smoothed and straightened, the pillows plumped and positioned. This was not mere housekeeping, but a daily act of care and preparation for the sacred time of sleep. Pillows in medieval times were quite different from modern ones. They were often small and firm, stuffed with materials ranging from straw to feathers to herbs. Wealthy individuals might have several pillows of different sizes and firmnesses arranged to provide optimal comfort for different sleeping positions. Some pillows were stuffed with aromatic herbs like lavender, rosemary, or chamomile, chosen not just for their pleasant scents, but for their believed properties of promoting restful sleep and pleasant dreams. The placement of the bed within the yabu room was also carefully considered. Medieval people understood principles that modern feng shui practitioners would recognize. The bed should be positioned to allow the sleeper to see the door, but not be directly in line with it. Windows were considered both for their provision of natural light and air and for their potential as sources of drafts or unwanted intrusions. Around the bed, other furniture would be arranged to support the rituals of sleep and waking. A chest at the foot of the bed provided storage for linens and clothing, while also serving as a bench for sitting while preparing for bed. Small tables or shelves might hold candles, prayer books, or personal items needed for nighttime routines. The fire continues its gentle murmur, and we can almost smell the mixture of scents that would have filled a medieval bedchamber. The smoke from candles, the herbs in the mattress and pillows, the wool and linen of the bedding, and perhaps the faint aroma of rosewater or other perfumes used in evening ablutions. Lighting in the bedchamber was carefully managed. Too much light could interfere with sleep, but some illumination was necessary for evening preparations and potential midnight activities. Candles were expensive, so they were used judiciously. Wealthy households might have several candles burning during evening preparations, then extinguish all but one, which would be allowed to burn down naturally or be carefully snuffed before sleep. The transition from the activities of day to the rituals of night was marked by changes in clothing, behavior, and mindset. Outer garments would be carefully removed and either hung on pegs or folded and stored in chests. The elaborate dress of the day would give way to simpler, more comfortable sleeping attire, and with this change in clothing came a change in demeanor and thought, a gradual shift toward the quieter, more introspective mood appropriate for sleep. As we settle deeper into our understanding of these medieval sleeping arrangements, the fire seems to emphasize how thoroughly these people understood the importance of creating a proper environment for rest, an understanding that encompassed everything from the physical comfort of mattresses and pillows to the psychological comfort of familiar rituals and protective symbols. The fireplace continues its steady rhythm, the flames now seeming to reveal the deeper mysteries of medieval sleep as we settle more comfortably into understanding these ancient patterns of rest. The warmth reminds us of how central fire was to medieval sleeping arrangements, not just for warmth, but as a source of comfort and security through the long night hours. In medieval society, the timing of sleep was intimately connected to social class and occupation. Peasants and laborers, whose work was tied directly to daylight, would typically retire shortly after sunset and rise before dawn. Their sleep patterns were closely aligned with natural rhythms, changing with the seasons as the length of daylight hours varied. In winter, they might spend 12 or more hours in bed, not necessarily sleeping the entire time, but resting in the warmth and darkness. The nobility and wealthy merchants had more flexibility in their sleep schedules, but even they were constrained by the limitations of artificial light. Candles and oil lamps were expensive, so even the wealthy were reluctant to extend their waking hours too far into the night. However, their social obligations sometimes required them to stay awake for evening entertainments, feasts, or important discussions that could only happen when the day's work was done. The fire shifts, creating new patterns of light and shadow, much like the varying patterns of medieval sleep that changed with circumstances, seasons, and social requirements. What remained constant was the understanding that sleep was not a single, monolithic block of unconsciousness, but rather a complex, varied experience that could be shaped and influenced by preparation, environment, and intention. Medieval physicians had developed sophisticated theories about sleep and its relationship to health. They understood that sleep was one of the six non naturals, external factors that could be controlled to maintain health and prevent disease. These physicians recommended specific sleeping positions, optimal room temperatures, and even particular foods that should be eaten or avoided before bedtime. The recommended sleeping position was generally on the right side, which was believed to aid digestion and prevent the accumulation of harmful humors. Sleeping on the back was discouraged, as it was thought to cause nightmares and make breathing difficult. The left side was considered acceptable, but not ideal. These recommendations were based on centuries of observation and the medical theories inherited from ancient Greek and Roman physicians. The concept of sleep hygiene, though not called by that name, was well understood in medieval times. People knew that certain activities promoted good sleep, while others interfered with it. Heavy meals before bedtime were discouraged, as was excessive drinking of wine or ale. Physical activity in the hours before sleep was thought to be disruptive, while gentle, contemplative activities like prayer or quiet conversation were considered beneficial. The fire crackles softly, and we can imagine medieval people following their evening routines, each activity carefully chosen to promote peaceful sleep. These routines varied by social class and individual preference, but they shared common elements that modern sleep researchers would recognize as beneficial practices. Evening prayers were a universal part of medieval bedtime preparation, but these were not hurried or perfunctory recitations. People would kneel beside their beds, sometimes for extended periods, using prayer as a way to transition from the concerns of day to the peace of night. These prayers often included specific requests for protection during sleep, gratitude for the day's blessings, and preparation for whatever challenges the next day might bring. The practice of confession and examination of conscience before sleep was also common. People would mentally review the day's events, acknowledge any wrongs they had committed, and make internal resolutions for improvement. This practice served both spiritual and psychological purposes, helping to clear the mind of guilt or worry that might interfere with peaceful sleep. Medieval people also understood the importance of the sleep environment in ways that might surprise modern people. They knew that certain colors, scents, and sounds could influence the quality of sleep and dreams. Bedchambers were often painted in soothing colors, like soft blues or greens, when paint was available. More commonly, they were decorated with tapestries or painted cloths that featured calming scenes or protective religious imagery. The use of herbs and aromatics in the sleeping environment was sophisticated and widespread. Lavender was prized not just for its pleasant scent, but for its believed properties of promoting calm and restful sleep. Rosemary was thought to improve memory and prevent nightmares. Chamomile was used both as a tea drunk before bedtime and as a stuffing for pillows and mattresses. The fire seems to emphasize the importance of scent in these medieval sleeping arrangements. In an age when artificial fragrances were rare and expensive, the natural scents of herbs, clean linens, and wood smoke created a sensory environment that signaled to the body and mind that it was time for rest. The social aspects of medieval sleep were complex and varied. In many households, multiple generations shared sleeping spaces, with grandparents, parents, and children all sleeping in close proximity. This arrangement provided warmth and security, but it also required careful negotiation of different sleep schedules and needs. Children learned from an early age to sleep despite the presence of others, developing skills that modern people, accustomed to private bedrooms, might find challenging. Servants in wealthy households often slept in the same rooms as their masters, on small beds or pallets arranged around the great bed. This proximity served multiple purposes. It provided the masters with immediate assistance if needed during the night, it offered protection and security, and it allowed for efficient use of heat and space in large, drafty buildings. The relationship between sleep and dreams was taken very seriously in medieval times. Dreams were not dismissed as mere psychological phenomena, but were considered to be potentially meaningful communications from the divine, warnings of future events, or messages from deceased loved ones. People would often discuss their dreams with family members or spiritual advisors, seeking interpretation and guidance. The fear of nightmares was real and widespread in medieval society. These were not just unpleasant dreams, but were believed to be actual visits from evil spirits or demons who could cause both psychological and physical harm. As a result, people developed elaborate protective rituals and charms designed to ward off these nocturnal threats. As the fire continues its gentle conversation with the night, we begin to appreciate how seriously medieval people took the business of sleep, treating it not as a simple biological necessity, but as a complex, spiritually significant part of human experience that required careful preparation, protection, and respect. The fireplace has settled into a deeper, more rhythmic burning now, the flames lower but more steady, creating the perfect atmosphere for contemplating the more intimate and personal aspects of medieval sleep customs. As the fire whispers its ancient songs, we find ourselves drawn into the private world of medieval nights, where sleep was interwoven with spirituality, community, and profound understanding of human rhythms. The practice of first sleep and second sleep reveals perhaps the most fascinating aspect of medieval rest patterns. Modern sleep researchers have discovered that when people are isolated from artificial light for extended periods, they naturally fall into this biphasic sleep pattern, suggesting that medieval people were living in harmony with deep biological rhythms that we have only recently begun to understand again. During the period of wakefulness between first and second sleep, medieval people engaged in activities that seem almost meditative to our modern understanding. They would lie quietly in the darkness, neither fully asleep nor fully awake, in a state that we might now recognize as similar to the twilight consciousness sought in various forms of meditation. This was a time for prayer, but not the formal, structured prayers of daytime worship. Instead, these were intimate conversations with the divine, personal reflections, and quiet contemplations. The fire pops gently, sending up a brief shower of sparks, and we can imagine how these small sounds would have been magnified in the deep quiet of medieval nights. In this silence, people developed an acute awareness of the subtle sounds around them, the breathing of family members, the settling of timber in the house frame, the distant sounds of animals in the courtyard, and the whisper of wind around the building's corners. Couples used this wakeful period for intimate conversation in ways that the busy daylight hours rarely allowed. These midnight talks were considered precious and important, a time when the barriers of daily life fell away and deeper communication became possible. Historical records suggest that many important family decisions were made during these quiet hours when distractions were minimal and minds were clear. Some people would rise during this middle of the night wakefulness to tend to various tasks. They might check on animals, add fuel to fires, or engage in quiet work by candlelight. Women might do needlework or spinning, activities that could be done in dim light and wouldn't disturb sleeping family members. Men might sharpen tools, repair equipment, or plan the next day's work. The acceptance of this natural rhythm meant that medieval people never experienced the anxiety about sleep that plagues many modern individuals. There was no clock watching, no worry about getting back to sleep, no sense that waking in the middle of the night indicated a problem. Instead, this wakefulness was simply part of the natural flow of night, to be used productively and peacefully until second sleep naturally arrived. The fire continues its steady burning, and we can almost feel the peace that this acceptance must have brought to medieval sleepers. Without the pressure to sleep continuously, without the artificial urgency created by alarm clocks and rigid schedules, sleep became a more natural, less fraught experience. Medieval children were raised with this understanding of sleep from birth. They learned to sleep despite the presence of others, to accept natural rhythms of waking and sleeping, and to use quiet, wakeful periods for rest and reflection rather than anxiety and frustration. This early training created adults who had a fundamentally different relationship with sleep than most modern people experience. The seasonal variations in medieval sleep patterns were pronounced and accepted as natural. During the long winter nights, people might spend 12 or 14 hours in bed, not necessarily sleeping the entire time, but resting in warmth and conserving energy during the harshest months. Summer nights brought shorter sleep periods, with people rising earlier to make the most of the longer daylight hours for work. These seasonal adjustments were not seen as inconvenient or problematic, but as natural adaptations to the rhythm of the year. Medieval people understood that just as plants and animals adjusted their behaviors to seasonal changes, humans too needed to adapt their sleep and activity patterns to remain healthy and productive throughout the year. The fire shifts again, creating new patterns of light and shadow that remind us of the flickering candlelight that would have illuminated medieval bedchambers during evening preparations. These candles were not just sources of light, but important elements in the ritual preparation for sleep. The act of lighting evening candles, moving through the house with a candle to check locks and fires, and finally extinguishing the last candle before sleep were all meaningful parts of the transition from day to night. Medieval people developed sophisticated understandings of how different factors affected sleep quality. They knew that certain weather conditions could influence sleep. Storms might make sleep fitful, while clear, cool nights often brought the most restful sleep. They understood that emotional states affected sleep patterns, and they developed strategies for managing worry, excitement, or grief that might interfere with rest. The concept of sleep as a time of vulnerability was central to medieval understanding. People were aware that during sleep, they were less able to protect themselves from physical threats, spiritual dangers, or even natural disasters like fires. This awareness led to elaborate preparations designed to maximize safety during the sleeping hours. Household security was carefully arranged with nighttime vulnerabilities in mind. Dogs were valued not just for their daytime usefulness, but for their ability to alert sleeping humans to nighttime dangers. Doors were barred, shutters secured, and fires carefully banked to provide warmth without presenting fire hazards. These preparations were ritual acts that helped people feel secure enough to surrender to sleep. The spiritual preparation for sleep was equally important. Evening prayers included specific requests for protection during the vulnerable hours of sleep, and many people wore religious medals or kept blessed objects near their beds. The bed itself might be blessed or consecrated, and some people made the sign of the cross before lying down, claiming divine protection for the night hours. As the fire continues its gentle murmur, we begin to understand how thoroughly medieval people integrated sleep into their understanding of life's rhythms, treating it not as dead time to be minimized, but as an essential, sacred part of human experience that deserved careful attention, preparation, and respect. The fire has now burned down to glowing embers that pulse with a deep, warm light, creating the perfect atmosphere for exploring the more profound and mysterious aspects of medieval sleep culture. In this deeper phase of our contemplation, we discover that medieval people had developed understandings about sleep that were remarkably sophisticated, touching on aspects of human rest that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. The medieval understanding of dreams was complex and multifaceted, going far beyond simple psychological interpretation. Dreams were categorized into different types, each with its own significance and method of interpretation. There were prophetic dreams, which were believed to offer glimpses of future events, healing dreams, which could provide guidance for treating illness, and spiritual dreams, which offered communication with the divine or with deceased loved ones. The interpretation of dreams was a serious practice, often involving consultation with learned individuals such as priests, physicians, or wise women who had studied the symbolic language of sleep visions. Dream interpretation manuals existed, passed down through generations, and refined through centuries of observation and experience. These texts provided detailed guidance on how to understand the symbolic content of dreams and how to apply their messages to waking life. The fire glows steadily, and we can imagine medieval people lying quietly in their beds after waking from vivid dreams, carefully reviewing every detail to ensure accurate recollection for later interpretation. This careful attention to dreams created a rich interior life that extended far beyond the boundaries of waking consciousness. Medieval physicians understood that the quality of sleep directly affected physical health, mental clarity, and emotional stability. They developed detailed recommendations for creating optimal sleeping conditions, taking into account factors such as room temperature, air circulation, sleeping position, and pre sleep activities. These recommendations were based on centuries of careful observation and were remarkably consistent with modern sleep science. The concept of sleep debt was well understood, though not called by that name. Medieval people knew that insufficient sleep led to decreased ability to work, increased susceptibility to illness, and impaired judgment. They also understood that this debt could be repaid through additional rest, and they structured their lives to allow for recovery, sleep when needed. The relationship between food and sleep was carefully studied and documented. Medieval people knew that certain foods promoted restful sleep, while others could cause restlessness or nightmares. They developed specific dietary recommendations for the evening meal, emphasizing foods that were easy to digest and avoided those that might cause discomfort during the night. The fire continues, its gentle glow reminiscent of the carefully banked fires that provided warmth through medieval nights. The skill required to maintain these fires properly was considerable. They needed to provide warmth without presenting fire hazards, and they needed to last through the long night hours without requiring frequent attention that would disturb sleep. Medieval people also understood the importance of mental preparation for sleep in ways that seem remarkably sophisticated to modern understanding. They knew that carrying the day's worries and anxieties into sleep would result in restless nights and unrefreshing rest. As a result, they developed elaborate rituals for putting the day to rest before allowing the body to sleep. These rituals might include formal prayers that specifically released the concerns of the day into divine care, mental exercises that involved consciously setting aside work related thoughts, and contemplative practices that shifted attention from external concerns to internal peace. Some people kept journals where they would write down their worries before sleep, effectively removing them from active mental circulation. The practice of gratitude before sleep was widespread and sophisticated. People would mentally review the day's blessings, acknowledging gifts received, challenges overcome, and relationships nurtured. This practice served both spiritual and psychological purposes, creating a positive mental state that promoted peaceful sleep and pleasant dreams. Medieval understanding of the connection between physical comfort and sleep quality was highly developed. They knew that discomfort of any kind, whether from temperature, position, clothing, or bedding, could prevent restful sleep. As a result, they paid careful attention to every aspect of the sleeping environment, making adjustments throughout the night as needed to maintain optimal comfort. The fire shifts slightly, creating new patterns of light and shadow that remind us of the way medieval people would adjust their sleeping arrangements throughout the night. They might add or remove blankets as temperature changed, adjust pillows for better support, or shift position to relieve pressure on joints and muscles. The social dynamics of medieval sleep were complex and carefully negotiated. In households where multiple people shared sleeping spaces, there were unwritten rules about movement, noise, and behavior during the night hours. Children learned early how to sleep without disturbing others, and adults developed skills for moving quietly when necessary. The concept of sleep as a time for healing was central to medieval understanding. They believed that the body's natural healing processes were most active during sleep, and they structured their approach to illness accordingly. Sick individuals were encouraged to sleep as much as possible, and their sleeping environments were carefully optimized to promote recovery. Medieval people also understood that different types of work required different amounts and types of sleep. Mental work was believed to require more sleep than physical labor, and people whose occupations involved learning, teaching, or decision making were encouraged to prioritize sleep quality and quantity. The fire continues its steady glow, and we begin to appreciate the depth and sophistication of medieval sleep wisdom. These were not primitive people stumbling through the darkness, but individuals who had developed profound understandings of human rest patterns, creating practices and beliefs that supported both physical health and spiritual well being. The integration of sleep into the larger rhythms of medieval life was complete and seamless. Sleep was not seen as time stolen from productive activity, but as an essential component of a life well lived. This understanding created a relationship with rest that was fundamentally different from modern approaches, one that honored sleep as a sacred and necessary part of human experience. The fire has now settled into its deepest, most contemplative state, glowing with steady warmth that seems to connect us directly to the sacred understanding medieval people had of sleep and rest. In this profound phase of our journey, we discover that for medieval minds, sleep was not merely a biological necessity, but a gateway to spiritual experiences and divine connection. Medieval monasteries developed the most sophisticated understanding of sleep's spiritual dimensions. Monks and nuns structured their entire daily rhythm around the belief that different hours of the night offered unique opportunities for prayer, contemplation, and divine communion. The practice of matins, the night office sung in the early morning hours, was based on the understanding that the deep night hours provided special access to spiritual realms. The monastic schedule typically included a sleep period from approximately 8 p.m. to midnight, followed by the night office, then a return to sleep until dawn. This rhythm was not arbitrary, but was based on centuries of experiential knowledge about when the human spirit was most receptive to divine influence. The midnight awakening was seen as a time when the veil between earthly and heavenly realms was thinnest. The fire glows steadily, and we can almost hear the distant sound of monastic bells calling the faithful to prayer in the deep hours of night. These bells were not intrusions into sleep, but integral parts of a rhythm that honored both human need for rest and spiritual calling for communion with the divine. Lay people, inspired by monastic practices, developed their own versions of sacred sleep schedules. Many would wake naturally in the middle of the night for personal prayer time, using these quiet hours for intimate conversation with God, contemplation of spiritual matters, and preparation for the challenges of the coming day. The medieval understanding of sleep as a spiritual practice extended beyond formal religious observances. People believed that sleep itself was a form of prayer, a daily surrender to divine will that demonstrated trust and faith. The act of lying down each night was seen as a conscious choice to release control and place oneself in God's care, making sleep itself an act of worship. Dreams were considered to be one of the primary ways that divine messages could reach human consciousness. The relaxed, receptive state of sleep was believed to make the mind more open to spiritual communication than the busy, distracted state of waking consciousness. People would often pray before sleep, specifically requesting divine guidance through dreams, and they would carefully attend to their dream experiences for signs and messages. The fire continues its steady glow, illuminating the profound trust that medieval people placed in the spiritual dimensions of sleep. This trust allowed them to approach sleep with a sense of sacred anticipation rather than anxiety or resistance. Sleep became not something to be conquered or controlled, but something to be entered into with reverence and openness. Medieval people understood that the boundary between sleep and waking was more fluid than modern minds typically recognize. They spoke of twilight states of consciousness where prayer and contemplation could continue even as the body rested. These liminal states were particularly valued for their spiritual potential, offering opportunities for mystical experiences and deep insights. The practice of lectio divina, or sacred reading, was often extended into the sleep period. People would fall asleep while contemplating specific scriptural passages or spiritual texts, allowing these sacred words to work in their consciousness throughout the night. This practice was believed to sanctify sleep itself, transforming the hours of rest into periods of spiritual growth and development. Medieval mystics developed sophisticated understandings of how sleep could be used for spiritual advancement. They spoke of sleeping in God, a state where conscious surrender to divine will could continue even during physical rest. This was not merely metaphorical language, but described a real experience where spiritual awareness could persist through the sleep state. The fire shifts gently, creating new patterns of light that seem to reflect the subtle movements of consciousness between sleeping and waking that medieval people understood so well. These transitions were not seen as barriers to be crossed, but as natural rhythms to be honored and utilized for spiritual growth. The concept of sleep as death's rehearsal was common in medieval thought, but this was not a morbid preoccupation. Rather, it was understood as daily practice for the ultimate surrender that death would require. By learning to release control and trust divine care during sleep, people prepared themselves for the final letting go that death would demand. This understanding gave medieval sleep a quality of conscious preparation and surrender that modern sleep rarely achieves. Each night's rest became an opportunity to practice the virtues of trust, surrender, and faith that would be essential for spiritual growth and ultimate salvation. The protective prayers and rituals surrounding medieval sleep were not merely superstitious practices, but expressions of a worldview that recognized the spiritual significance of the sleep state. People understood that during sleep, when conscious defenses were lowered, special protection was needed from both seen and unseen threats. The fire continues its contemplative glow, and we begin to understand how the medieval integration of sleep into spiritual practice created a fundamentally different experience of rest. Sleep was not empty time to be unconscious, but sacred time to be used for spiritual growth, divine communication, and preparation for both daily life and eternal destiny. Medieval people also understood that the quality of one's spiritual life directly affected the quality of sleep. Those who lived in harmony with spiritual principles typically experienced more peaceful rest, while those who harbored guilt, anger, or other negative emotions often suffered from sleep disturbances. This understanding motivated people to address spiritual issues as part of maintaining healthy sleep patterns. The practice of examination of conscience before sleep was both a spiritual discipline and a practical health measure. By reviewing the day's actions and attitudes, acknowledging wrongs, and making resolutions for improvement, people cleared their minds of the guilt and worry that could interfere with restful sleep. The medieval understanding that sleep could be a time of healing extended beyond physical recovery to include emotional and spiritual healing. People would often go to sleep with specific requests for healing of relationships, relief from spiritual burdens, or guidance for difficult decisions, trusting that the restorative powers of sleep could work on multiple levels simultaneously. As the fire continues its steady presence, we begin to appreciate how thoroughly medieval people integrated sleep into their understanding of a life lived in relationship with the divine, creating practices and beliefs that honored sleep as a sacred gift rather than merely a biological necessity. The fire has now burned down to its most peaceful state, glowing coals that radiate steady warmth while maintaining the gentle, rhythmic sounds that have accompanied our entire journey through medieval sleep customs. In this quieter phase, we turn our attention to the actual transition into sleep itself, exploring how medieval people moved from wakefulness into rest with intention, grace, and deep understanding of this daily transformation. The evening preparations for sleep in medieval households began well before the actual moment of lying down. As twilight approached, the pace of household activities would gradually slow, creating a natural transition from the active energy of day to the receptive quiet of night. This wasn't simply a matter of finishing work, but a conscious shift in the quality of attention and activity. Medieval people understood that the mind and body needed time to prepare for sleep, and they structured their evening hours accordingly. The last meal of the day would be taken several hours before sleep, allowing time for digestion. Heavy work would be completed before sunset, leaving the evening hours for quieter activities that wouldn't stimulate the body or agitate the mind. The fire glows peacefully, reminding us of how central the hearth was to these evening preparations. Families would gather around the fire for the final activities of the day, sharing stories, mending clothes, or simply sitting together in companionable silence. This gathering time served multiple purposes. It provided warmth and light for necessary tasks, it strengthened family bonds, and it created a natural buffer between the busy day and the quiet night. As full darkness approached, the activities around the fire would become increasingly quiet and contemplative. Children would be sent to bed first, often after receiving blessings from their parents and grandparents. These bedtime blessings were not mere formalities, but heartfelt prayers for protection, peaceful sleep, and divine care through the vulnerable hours of night. The process of banking the fire for the night was both practical and symbolic. This required considerable skill. The fire needed to be arranged so that it would provide warmth through the night without presenting a danger of uncontrolled burning. But beyond the practical necessity, the banking of the fire marked the formal end of the day's activities and the beginning of the household's transition into sleep. Medieval people paid careful attention to their evening ablutions, understanding that physical cleanliness contributed to comfortable sleep and spiritual purity. While full bathing was not daily practice for most people, evening washing of hands, face, and feet was common. This cleaning ritual was often accompanied by prayers of purification and preparation for the night ahead. The fire continues its gentle presence as we imagine the soft sounds of these evening preparations. The splash of water in washing basins, the whisper of clothing being removed and carefully stored, the creak of wooden chests being opened to retrieve sleeping garments, and the soft murmur of evening prayers beginning. The donning of sleeping garments was a significant part of the transition ritual. For those wealthy enough to have special sleeping clothes, the change from day clothes to night clothes marked a clear boundary between active and restful states. Even for those who simply removed outer garments and slept in their underclothes, this change in clothing was a physical signal to the body that it was time to rest. Medieval sleeping garments were designed with both comfort and modesty in mind. They were typically loose fitting to allow for comfortable movement during sleep, made from soft fabrics that wouldn't irritate the skin, and often white or light colored, symbolizing purity and peace. Some sleeping garments were embroidered with protective symbols or religious imagery, extending the spiritual protection that surrounded medieval sleep. The arrangement of the bed itself was the final step in physical preparation for sleep. Pillows would be fluffed and positioned, blankets arranged according to the night's temperature, and bed curtains adjusted to provide optimal privacy and warmth. This careful attention to physical comfort reflected the understanding that the body needed to be completely comfortable to achieve truly restful sleep. The fire settles with a soft whisper, and we can almost feel the satisfaction that medieval people must have experienced as they completed these preparations, knowing that they had done everything possible to ensure a peaceful, comfortable night's rest. Mental and spiritual preparation for sleep was equally important. The evening prayers were typically longer and more contemplative than daytime prayers, allowing time for a thorough review of the day's events and a conscious release of the day's concerns. These prayers often included specific requests for protection during sleep, gratitude for the day's blessings, and preparation for whatever the next day might bring. The practice of conscious gratitude before sleep was widespread and sophisticated. People would mentally review the day's experiences, deliberately focusing on positive events, kindnesses received, and challenges successfully met. This practice of gratitude served both spiritual and psychological purposes, creating a positive mental state that promoted peaceful sleep and pleasant dreams. Medieval people also understood the importance of releasing worry and anxiety before sleep. They developed various mental techniques for putting worries to rest, including formal prayers that placed concerns in divine care, mental exercises that consciously set aside work related thoughts, and contemplative practices that shifted attention from external problems to internal peace. The transition from waking prayer to sleep itself was often gradual and gentle, rather than abruptly stopping prayer and trying to fall asleep. Medieval people would allow their prayers to become quieter and more repetitive, gradually fading into the peaceful silence that preceded sleep. This gentle transition respected the natural rhythm of consciousness, moving from active awareness to restful unconsciousness. The fire continues its steady glow, and we begin to understand how thoroughly medieval people honored the transition into sleep, treating it not as a sudden switch from waking to sleeping, but as a gradual, purposeful journey that deserved careful attention and respectful preparation. The final moments before sleep were often spent in silent communion with the divine, a peaceful surrender of consciousness that combined complete trust with profound gratitude. This surrender was not passive resignation, but active choice to release control and place oneself in divine care for the vulnerable hours ahead. As the fire maintains its gentle presence, we can almost feel the peace that must have filled medieval bedchambers as people completed their evening preparations and settled into sleep with the confidence that they had honored both their physical needs for comfort and their spiritual needs for protection and connection with the divine. The fire has now reached its most tranquil state, glowing embers that whisper softly in the deep quiet of night, creating the perfect atmosphere for our final exploration of medieval sleep, the actual moment of surrender to rest and the profound experiences that awaited in the realm of dreams and a deep slumber. In this final phase of our journey, we discover that for medieval people, the transition from waking consciousness to sleep was not simply a biological process, but a sacred passage that required reverence, trust, and complete surrender to forces beyond human control. The moment of falling asleep was understood as a daily death and rebirth, a letting go of the conscious self, and a trusting entry into the mysterious realm where body and soul could be restored. The fire glows steadily, its warmth reminiscent of the comfort that medieval people found in their carefully prepared sleeping spaces. As consciousness began to fade each night, they would often focus on the simple, steady sensations that anchored them to safety: the warmth of blankets, the softness of pillows, the familiar scents of herbs and clean linens, and the reassuring sounds of family members breathing nearby. Medieval people understood that the moments just before sleep were particularly powerful and significant. During this twilight state of consciousness, when the mind was relaxed but still aware, they believed that the soul was most receptive to divine influence and spiritual insight. Many would use these precious moments for their deepest, most intimate prayers, offering their day's experiences to God and opening themselves to receive guidance and blessing. The practice of falling asleep while contemplating sacred words or images was common and highly valued. People would often repeat a favorite prayer phrase or visualize a beloved religious image as consciousness faded, allowing these sacred elements to be the last thoughts of waking awareness and potentially the first influences on their dream experiences. The fire continues its gentle murmur, and we can imagine the profound peace that filled medieval hearts as they released the day's burdens and trusted themselves to divine care. This surrender was complete and without reservation. There was no anxiety about the time it might take to fall asleep, no worry about whether sleep would be sufficient, no fear about the vulnerability that sleep represented. Dreams, when they came, were received as gifts rather than random neurological events. Medieval people believed that dreams could carry important messages, offer glimpses of future events, provide comfort from deceased loved ones, or present symbolic guidance for life's challenges. They would often wake from vivid dreams with a sense of having received something precious and meaningful. The interpretation of dreams was a skill that many medieval people developed, understanding that the symbolic language of sleep required careful attention and thoughtful analysis. They knew that dreams often spoke in metaphors and symbols rather than literal terms, and they had developed sophisticated methods for understanding these nighttime communications. The fire shifts gently, creating subtle changes in light and shadow that remind us of the shifting landscapes of medieval dreams. These dreams were often richly detailed and emotionally powerful, perhaps because medieval people lived closer to their unconscious minds than we do in our busy, distracted, modern world. The experience of deep sleep itself was understood differently in medieval times. Rather than being seen as a period of complete unconsciousness, deep sleep was believed to be a time when the soul could travel, when healing energies could work most effectively, and when the divine could most easily reach human consciousness. This understanding made sleep feel purposeful and valuable rather than simply necessary. Medieval people also recognized different qualities and depths of sleep, understanding that some nights brought more restorative rest than others. They knew that the quality of sleep was affected by the day's activities, the evening's preparations, the sleeping environment, and the sleeper's emotional and spiritual state. This knowledge helped them optimize their sleep experiences through careful attention to all these factors. The concept of sleep as a time of spiritual vulnerability was balanced by trust in divine protection. Medieval people would often fall asleep while mentally repeating protective prayers or visualizing themselves surrounded by divine light. This practice provided comfort and security while also acknowledging the real spiritual dimensions of the sleep state. The fire continues its steady presence, and we begin to understand how the medieval approach to sleep created experiences of rest that were both deeply restorative and spiritually meaningful. Sleep was not seen as empty time to be unconscious, but as rich, purposeful time when healing, growth, and divine connection could occur. The awakening from sleep was also treated as a sacred moment. Medieval people often woke naturally without the jarring intrusion of artificial alarms, allowing consciousness to return gradually and gently. The first moments of waking were often spent in gratitude for the night's rest and protection, acknowledgement of any dreams or insights received, and preparation for the day ahead. The transition from sleep to waking was understood to be as important as the transition from waking to sleep. Medieval people would often lie quietly for several minutes after waking, allowing their minds to gather the experiences of the night and integrate them with their conscious awareness before beginning the active business of the day. The fire glows peacefully as we complete our journey through the fascinating world of medieval sleep customs. We have discovered that these were not primitive people struggling with basic survival needs, but sophisticated individuals who had developed profound understandings of rest, dreams, and the daily rhythm of consciousness that supported both physical health and spiritual growth. Their approach to sleep was holistic, recognizing the connections between physical comfort, mental peace, emotional well being, and spiritual development. They understood that sleep was not separate from life, but integral to it, a daily opportunity for restoration, healing, and connection with the divine that deserved careful attention and respectful preparation. As our fire burns down to its final glowing embers, we can carry forward the wisdom of these medieval sleep practices, the importance of gradual transitions, the value of preparing both body and mind for rest, the power of gratitude and release before sleep, and the understanding that sleep itself is a sacred gift that connects us to the deepest rhythms of human existence. The gentle crackling fades to a whisper. The warmth continues to embrace us, and we find ourselves naturally drawn toward our own peaceful rest, enriched by this journey through the centuries, and blessed with new appreciation for the ancient art of truly restful sleep. In the deep quiet that follows, consciousness gently fades, dreams begin to weave their mysterious patterns, and the soul settles into the timeless rhythm of rest and renewal that has sustained humanity through countless generations of peaceful nights and restorative mornings. The fire glows softly in the darkness, a faithful companion through our journey into sleep, maintaining its gentle watch as consciousness dissolves into the blessed peace of deep, restorative slumber, where body and soul are renewed for another day's journey through the rich experiences of human life. Sleep comes naturally now, welcomed as a friend rather than pursued as a necessity, embraced as the sacred conclusion to each day's journey and the peaceful preparation for tomorrow's adventures in the endless, fascinating story of human experience.